Hello. Today we're in Acts chapter 25. I encourage you to open your Bibles and read the words for yourself. We're going to start with a trial, and then there's going to be a consult with the king, and then Paul will go before the king. We're going to end right at the beginning of that conflict, which also takes up the entirety of chapter 26. So if you remember from chapter 24, the governor Felix has retired, and he's got a replacement. His name is Festus. Festus goes from Caesarea to Jerusalem, where the chief priests and the Jewish leaders appeared before him to present charges against Paul. They asked as a favor to have Paul transferred to Jerusalem. They had a plan to kill him on the way. Festus was like, look, Paul's in Caesarea. I'm going to Caesarea. Why don't you send some of your leaders with me and we can press charges there if you haven't. So they spent 8 days together, went down to Caesarea. The next day they convened in the court and had Paul brought before them, and the Jews surrounded him and brought many serious charges against him, but none that they could prove. Paul in his own defense says, I have done nothing wrong against the Jewish people or the temple or against Caesar. Festus was wanting to do a favor for the Jews, so he asked Paul if he was willing to go up to Jerusalem to plead his case. Paul said back, I am now standing before Caesar's court, where I ought to be tried. I have done nothing wrong against the Jews. You know this very well. If, however, I am guilty of doing anything deserving of death, I do not refuse to die. But if the charges brought against me by the Jews are false, no one has the right to hand me over to them. I appeal to Caesar. And Festus said, well, you appeal to Caesar you will go. A few days later, King Agrippa and Bernice arrived in Caesarea to pay their respects to the new governor, and they spent many days there. Festus discusses this issue with Agrippa. He says, look, these Jews want me to hand Paul over to them. I told him that he has to have the right to defend himself. I didn't delay the case. As soon as they arrived, we went forward with it, and the accusers didn't charge him with any crime. I had some disputes about some religious beliefs and some guy named Jesus rising from the dead. He was at a total loss on how to do the investigation. Now, I asked Paul if he would want to go down to Jerusalem to face these charges, and he appealed to Caesar. So he's just being held until I have time to send him. Agrippa says to Festus, I would like to hear this man myself. So the next day, Festus had Paul brought before him. Agrippa and Bernice entered the audience with high-ranking military officers and prominent men of the city. Festus has Paul brought in and says, King Agrippa and all who are present with us, you see this man? The whole Jewish community has petitioned me about him in Jerusalem and here in Caesarea, doubting that he ought not to live any longer. I have found that he had done nothing deserving of death, but because he made his appeal to the emperor, I decided to send him to Rome. I have nothing definite to write to his highness about him. Therefore, I have brought him especially before you, King Agrippa. As a result of this investigation, I may have something to write, for I think it is unreasonable to send a prisoner to Rome without specifying the charges against him. We will continue on that thought the entire chapter 26. Getting real close to ending this here book. I think we're going to jump into Psalms, but we might do Romans. I might do Old Testament, New Testament, or I might just stick with the New Testament. I'll decide in the next couple days. But remember to stick your nose in here yourself, come to your own conclusions in prayer, and remember to ask yourself, what are you doing with your salvation?